everyone. Last time we finished and I gave you a preview of the very next chapter, which was called The Fire. I asked you to predict, where do you think that fire was coming from? And today we're going to find out. So here we go. Chapter 57, The Fire. Strange sounds were echoing from the far side of the pond. What started as a low murmur gradually swelled to a chorus of terrified voices. There was an eerie glow in the part of the forest, and a thick plume of smoke began rising up from the snowy treetops. Raj charged across the ice and found the second lodge completely engulfed by a raging fire. Frightened animals were running in every direction, fleeing for their lives through the deep snow. "What happened?" shouted Roz as Broadfoot galloped wildly past. "We put too many logs in the fire pit," he said, without stopping. The flames climbed up to the ceiling. "My baby is still in there," cried a mother hare, pointing at the burning lodge. "Somebody help, please." Roz didn't hesitate. She plowed through the snow and ducked into the lodge. Flames and smoke were everywhere. A tall stack of logs blazed in the fire pit, and in the far corner, a tiny ball of fur was shaking with fear. Crouching low, the robot wound her way beneath the smoke and around the flames and gently scooped up the young hare. "Do not worry," yelled Roz over the roar of the fire. "You're going to be okay." She turned to leave, but the doorway had started to crumble, so she shielded the hare with her body and smashed right through the walls of the lodge. Sizzling pieces of wood went flying as the robot and the hare burst outside into the soft snow. "Oh, darling, you're all right," cried the mother hare, pulling her daughter close. "Thank you for saving my baby, Roz." Now that everyone was safely away, the robot turned her attention to putting out the fire. Her glowing eyes darted around as she computed a plan. Then, with all the strength in her legs, Roz launched herself high up into the snowy branches of the nearest pine tree. A moment later, the tree was shaking violently, and heaps of snow were sliding from its branches and pouring onto the flames like an avalanche. Steam hissed up through the smothering mound of snow. The flames quickly died, the snow quickly melted, and within minutes, all that remained was the charred foundation of the lodge. Raj dropped down from the tree and waited as the frightened animals slowly returned. Then she said to them, "Would you like another lodge?" The animals looked at one another, unsure of what to do. Understandably, they were afraid of another fire breaking out, but they were far more afraid of the deadly cold. So they pulled together and worked with Roz and built a bigger, better lodge on top of the old one. It had a taller ceiling and a deeper fire pit. It was made with more rock and less wood, and it had a supply of water for emergencies. But the most important safety feature of this rebuilt lodge were the lodgers themselves, who now had a whole new respect for the fire. Chapter 58, The Conversations. Thanks to Roz's truce, life inside the nest was mostly harmonious. But when the animals went outside, it was business as usual. Sometimes a lodger wouldn't return. Sometimes a lodger would return in the belly of another lodger. As you can imagine, that made for some awkward moments. So when everyone was gathered around the fire, they tried to keep things pleasant by having conversations like these. "I wonder what Brightbill is doing right now." Chit-Chat lay on her back and looked at the ceiling as she spoke, "and where he is, and who he's with, and if he ever thinks about us back here on the island." "I'm sure he thinks about us," said Roz. "I think about him all the time. I like to imagine that the geese had a fun flight to the wintering grounds, and now Brightbill is floating on a lovely lake eating yummy food and making wonderful new friends. But hopefully they're not too wonderful, because I'd like to stay his best friend, if possible." "That's a nice thought," said Roz. "But I worry that the flock might have gotten caught in this icy weather. I do not think they would handle it well." "Don't worry, I'm sure they're fine," said Chit-Chat. "Brightbill is such a great flyer that I just know he'll keep the flock out of trouble." "He is a great flyer," said Roz, "but I still worry." "Life is short." Dig Down the old groundhog was giving another one of his fireside speeches. "I'll be lucky if I see spring. I don't want your pity. I've had a good run. But I'll tell you what, if I could do it all over again, I'd spend more time helping others. All I've ever done is dig tunnels. Some of them were real beauties, too. but they're all hidden underground where they're no good to anyone but me. And they weren't even good to me this winter. Now the beavers have it all figured out. They built this beautiful dam which created a lovely pond that made all our lives better. That must feel mighty good. The beavers made our lives better in another way, said Fink. They taught Roz how to build. Ain't that the truth, said Digdown. Roz, you must have saved half the island with your lodges, and to think we used to call you a monster. I'll repay my debt to you if it's the last thing I do. Your friendship is payment enough, said Roz. Oh, please, your sweetness is going to make me sick. There must be something we could do. Your friendship is really enough. Friends help each other, and I will need all the help I can get. My mind is strong, but my body will not last forever. I want to survive as long as possible, and to do that, I'll need the help of my friends. The animals listened quietly to Roz and thought of their own struggles to survive. Life in the wilderness was hard for everybody. There was no escaping that fact, but the robot had made their lives a little easier, and if ever they could, the animals would return the favor. I have seen 93 winters, far more than any of you, Crag the turtle spoke slowly, but everyone always listened to his words. And I can tell you that the winters have gotten colder, and the summers have gotten hotter, and the storms have gotten fiercer. I heard that the ocean has gotten higher, said Chit Chat, but I don't see how that could be true. I mean, where would all the extra water come from? You all right. The ocean is higher, said Crag. My grandfather used to say that long ago the island was not an island at all. It was a mountain surrounded by flatlands, and then the ground shook, and the oceans grew, and the land slowly flooded until the mountains became this island. Animals far and wide were forced to come here to escape the floodwaters. In those early days, there were too many animals living in too small a place. The island did not have enough food to feed them all. But between fighting and disease and famine, a balance was finally reached, and we have kept the balance ever since. Chit Chat's eyes grew wide with concern. If the ocean keeps rising, the island will be swallowed up by waves, and I don't even know how to swim. If the waves ever do swallow this island, it will not happen for a very long time, said Crag. By then, we will all be gone, even me. Everything has a purpose. It was Swooper's turn to lecture the lodgers. The sun was meant to give light, plants were meant to grow, we owls were meant to hunt. We mice were meant to hide. We raccoons were meant to scavenge. Roz, what were you meant to do? I don't know if I have a purpose. Ha! I respectfully disagree, said Swooper. Clearly you're meant to build. I think Roz is meant to grow gardens. Roz is definitely meant to care for Brightbill. Perhaps I simply am meant to help others. Chapter 59, the spring. Before I go on, that whole chapter, right, what they're talking about is everything that you've kind of been reading about in your packets about climate change and how the water levels are rising and the heat, right, the temperatures are changing. They said the winters are colder and the summers are warmer. That's everything that we've been kind of talking about in that reading, research, and writing portion. So it's interesting how this book is now tying in with all of our learning too. Chapter 59 is called The Spring. So finally winter is on its course and now we're in the spring. Dripping water, flowing water, splashing water. Winter's blanket of snow and ice was finally beginning to melt. White was fading away to expose the grays and browns that had been hidden beneath. Little green buds were appearing all over. Crowds of bright flowers were rising up from the dirt, and soon the island would be bursting with rich scents and colors. At long last, it was spring. The lodgers returned to their homes. The hibernators emerged from secret places. Roz roamed across the island and checked in with the beavers and the bears and all the friends she'd missed. Then the robot went home to work in her garden. After the bitterest winter anyone could recall, life was slowly returning to normal. However, it was a quiet spring. There were fewer insects buzzing, fewer birds singing, fewer rodents rattling. Many creatures had frozen over the winter. As the last of the snow melted away, their corpses were slowly revealed. The wilderness can really be ugly sometimes, but from that ugliness comes beauty. You see, those poor creatures return to the earth. Their bodies nourish the soil, and they help create the most dazzling spring blossom the island had ever known. So, readers, we're going to stop there, and I'm going to have you focus on that last part of this chapter. I thought it was really powerful to say. It says, out of the, from that ugliness can come beauty. So, I want you to think about what that means from going from winter into spring, having the animals who froze, that didn't make it, and Roz says their bodies nourish the soil to allow for this beautiful spring. So I want you to think about that quote. I'll post your reading response 16. And with that, you can also include a picture of what you think the island looks like now that winter has passed based on Roz's description. So you might want to go back the last 2 minutes and re-listen to how I described the spring. All right, that's all for today. See you soon.